Hello. Welcome to my channel, my vlog channel. I hope you've watched my first video because that kind of sets the tone for what I'm talking about in this video. Today I'm going to talk about the 4 pains, or the 4 levels of outrage or concern, however you'd want to call it. Now, I'm going to frame this around 2 controversial issues. I'm not really going to comment on those issues or take my own personal stance just yet, but I'm going to use them as a backdrop to kind of frame this idea. So the first will be the gun control mass shooting argument. Really just the mass shooting problem that the US has. The second will be the tragic killing of George Floyd that happened in late May of this year, 2020. That's kind of sparked a lot of race relation, protest, rioting kind of stuff. Now again, I'm not really going to comment on my opinion on any of these at the moment, but I'm using them to frame this 4 pains idea, and it goes as thus. So the first pain I call active sensation. So this is when you're the direct victim of pain, meaning, for example, your child has passed away. You are feeling the pain. You have just had someone that you lost in a mass shooting, or you are related to someone who has been the victim of police brutality. The second is empathy. This is where you've felt the pain that someone else is currently feeling. For example, someone else's child has passed away, and you've also lost a child in the past. Third is sympathy. You're in pain because someone else is in pain. Someone else's child has passed away, but yours hasn't. The fourth and final one I call inactive sensation. This is where you intellectually acknowledge someone else's pain as valid. Example, 20 people living in a different country that you don't know, have no relation to, you've never visited that country, have lost their children. Now this last one, you acknowledge the tragedy and the sadness, and you might even connect this with the empathy to one, if that is, applicable here. But if you haven't, then you just acknowledge the tragedy, but you're so far removed from it that you don't actually feel it. Now, the reason I kind of break this down is because I see people muddying this and not being consistent on this. Now I've got to figure out the right way to frame this so that I don't come across as like a monster here. But what I see happening sometimes is people either taking one of the more intense pains and opting for that and claiming they have that in situations where they wouldn't otherwise. Now let's say, for example, the case number 4, inactive sensation here. Let's say that a school bus in Norway or something, I live in the US, a school bus in Norway has veered off the road, fallen into a lake, and everyone in it drowned. So like school bus driver and let's say 5-10 kids, right? A tragedy, of course. But I can't have, let's say I don't have kids. I have 2 kids, but let's say I don't. I can't have empathy because I haven't felt the loss of children. I can have sympathy, but I don't know these people. I haven't met the families of the people who have died. I haven't even been to that country. So I can't really exhibit a high amount of sympathy because I don't have anyone to direct it to. So I'm left with inactive sensation, where I intellectually acknowledge the pain. To some degree, I can feel it. I can put myself in those people's shoes, is the closest thing I can get to. But I'm really just left with intellectually acknowledging the pain, and I don't actually have to feel very much in this case. Now, my big beef that I have with people sometimes isn't that it's not that they view things like mass shootings or police brutality as tragedies, because obviously they are. I'm not saying people should ignore them and blot them out and not feel anything about it. What I am saying is I see people treating instances like that in a certain way when there are analogous or similar situations that they don't feel that way about. For example, let's say there's a mass shooting. 7 people die in a very short span of time by one assailant. This gets a lot of publicity, news, media covers it, and the nation will mourn. But then I stop and think, wait a second, 20 people got killed over the weekend in Chicago. Why is this situation different from that? More people have died here, but over here it's one location, a small amount of time, one assailant. Does that change? This is kind of my question. Does that change how you should feel? Because with the 20 people, however many people die in Chicago or these very crime-ridden areas of the U.S., the high homicide rates, we're not in constant misery, mourning, active sensation, empathy or sympathy with all of the murders happening in the country. We can't be. There's just a certain level that we can't be. So are we taking these certain instances of less homicides just in one isolated area by one person in a small amount of time and grieving that? And is that correct to do? Should we have a certain level of outrage just because the scenario is slightly different even though the homicide level is lower? You know what I mean? Same thing with the police brutality issue. I see people having these higher level of pains when a black civilian gets killed by the police, an unarmed black civilian gets killed by the police, even though the number of white people getting killed by the police is double often. Now, it's a completely separate argument to talk about the reality of systemic racism, whether it exists or not. That's not really what I'm saying here. The question that I'm asking here, kind of like with the mass shooting one, is because there's a chance that there is a racial motivator here, is that what makes this different? Because the statistics don't bear out that there is an inordinate amount of white on black crime here. So when you have one race versus another race in terms of victim-assailant interaction, people assume that white assailant on black victim has to be racist. They jump to that conclusion. Whereas when it's the other way around, they don't. So that's really just my question, same with the mass shooting, is because you're assuming that there's a racial factor, which is something you can't necessarily prove, and the statistics don't bear it out, is that what you're saying makes it worse and that you feel worse because of it? So I'm eager to hear what you guys think. Like I said, I'm not really giving my opinion one way or the other. I'm just kind of trying to see how people feel about this. I hope that this can be kind of helpful for you in terms of like kind of seeing how you view the world as far as how you interact with it and feel the pain of others, how you feel pain, etc., etc. And again, like I said in my first video, feel free to disagree with me ad nauseum. The whole comment section can be just, people hating me. I can have as many dislikes. I don't care. I'm just trying to find the truth. If you don't think I have it, convince me that I don't. That's all. That's all I got. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this has been enjoyable, and I will see you in the next video. Fare thee well.